I found this random already made cup of coffee in my house. I hope it's not.
Is it warm?
Well, I put ice in it because I wanted iced coffee, so hopefully it doesn't kill me.
Yeah. Like, as long as it's not like peyote coffee or something.
It's
As long
like
as there isn't
trying
like
to true crime me.
right, like a thick layer of fuzz on the top, you're probably good.
Well, it's definitely from today. I just don't know why Nate didn't drink it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a
And I
problem
was
here.
like, I need coffee, so I will drink this.
Cat did something to it.
Yeah,
Oh God.
probably that.
Well, PJ, welcome back.
What do you mean? I've been here the whole time.
What?
I never left.
No, you've been gone like 4 episodes, something like that.
No, I've been in every episode. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about.
The next thing you got to say is, if you know, you know, and if you don't, well.
Well, then you think that we've lost our minds.
That was my favorite quote from that Di-Fi piece. So folks who don't know, Dianne Feinstein had an interview with 2 Hill reporters, not for the Hill, but, Capitol Hill reporters. And it became very clear to them that she didn't realize that she'd been gone from the Senate for 2.5 months.
Because she said directly that she had not been gone. I could not get more clear than that.
It's so bad. It's so fucked up.
It is.
Yeah, it is bad. And you know what? Like, I was, oh wow, I'm getting a phone call. It's bad, and it's like, it's not funny, but also it is funny. Like, and it's also terrible.
Yeah.
And it just like checks so many boxes of just ridiculousness that I think we can, like, that all just sums up the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking bonkers.
Yeah. It's just like them just like, no, my dog didn't shit in the house. What are you talking about? Sweeps it under the rug. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's just like, but we can all smell it and it's not good. Could we do something about this?
I mean, what? Like, what's gonna happen? She doesn't remember that she was gone since February, right? Like, it's a really fucking long time to be gone and not remember, dude.
There's only going to be more of these interviews too.
Yeah, it's just going to get worse and worse. And
what is it? Is it in service of Schiff to try and get him in the position? They just don't like Barbara Lee that much that they just really don't want someone that progressive in there. Like, it doesn't make sense.
I think.
Well, Dianne doesn't know that she's 89 years old.
Yeah. It's her staffers that are really the ones that are doing the kind of disgusting, nefarious thing of Weekend at Bernie's and her around the Capitol.
Dude.
And they're doing it so that they can maintain their power, maintain their positions. Like, the chief of staff is basically a senator right now, right?
Yeah.
It's so bad.
And they all know what's happening. They all know what they have to do as her handlers, like how to keep her away from folks.
Man, as her handlers. I mean,
just her in a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses.
No.
Yeah.
I imagine that. And I would just
we are almost there.
with the mustache.
Yeah.
So to your point, I do think Senate leadership does want Schiff to win this seat in 24. He's the moderate of the race so far. I don't think it's just Barbara Lee that they don't want to win. I think they don't want Katie Porter to win either. As it stands, Katie Porter's got a lot more money than Barbara. But actually, to your point, Newsom always did say if she stepped down, then he would appoint a black woman to this seat. And how do you not appoint Barbara Lee then? So I guess that's a really good point. And that really puts her in the inside lane.
Yeah.
Well,
Man.
And then she's the incumbent, and then you can't get her out, and it's the whole thing.
so we've got this till like November 2024. What is it right now? May 2023?
Yeah, dude.
No way.
Jeez.
They are gonna have to change out the formaldehyde a few times.
There's no way this lasts that long. There's
I know
no
it
fucking
can't.
way.
It can't, honestly. I mean, she like Dianne Feinstein also just needs like medical attention.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like this is at a certain point, this is fucking elder abuse. Like
Yeah, it's cruel.
she needs let her sit on her front porch and drink her lemonade and
Aw.
think that she is somewhere else and like allow her to live out the rest of her days in some sort of peace where she doesn't have to look like, you know, like the person that she looks like, not knowing that she has not been in the Senate since fucking February. It
You know,
just sucks.
You know the old adage, wherever you go, you've been there the whole time.
Diane, go to your porch.
Fuck, man. Well, plenty more to report on that front, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But why don't we start up the show today?
Yeah, can't wait. Let's do it.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hi, you have Kempa.
Also Shannon.
Also PJ.
I'm trying high now. That's my new thing.
Hi.
The new me.
Oh, hello.
Hello. So we've got an episode ahead today. I'm
Yeah,
very
we
excited
do.
to do it with you all.
Ooh.
Another early recording, always a fun experience. But we got to go have drinks with our District 4 Democratic Socialist Council member after this, or at least I do. I don't know about you two.
I'm gonna be watching Miss Stories.
I am going to that socialist event.
I think it'll be very nice. Hope to see
Socialist socializing.
you all there. But when you listen, folks, it will already be come and gone. So I won't focus on that right now. What I will focus on is how much we love the work we do. And if you love the work that we do, you should check out patreon.com/voicesrivercity and become a patron of this very good leftist show for as little as $5 a month, as much as $25 a month. And if you do the $25 a month, you can get a t-shirt and a mug from us. You can help support us in all the work that we're doing. It's good work. There's premium content. There's secret hangs. You might meet the next mayor at our next event. Who knows? Who knows? So going down to patreon.com/voicesrivercity and become a patron. But let's just let's start the show.
I 100% thought my computer was malfunctioning.
I'm trying a
Like,
lot of
I
new
ju-
things today.
I just bought this fucking computer. God damn it.
Everything's shorting out.
Exactly.
So-
what I mean.
Let's talk. We're going to be hyper local today, but for once we finally here in Sacramento had an incredibly spicy city council meeting. So
Never
yeah,
happened before.
did leftists
Never.
just take over the county surrounding Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania? Yes, they did. But we got to stick local. We got to talk right here, right now, folks. So we had the police come to City Hall last night being May 16th, Tuesday, and presenting the budget that they wanted for the next fiscal year. PJ, as our resident people's budget expert, Can you talk us through a little bit what that kind of looked like, and kind of, we're going to talk a little bit about how we had 3 progs up there on the dais that asked some really good questions last night. But why don't you give us the 50,000-foot view?
All right. So basically, what had happened is that the city police requested an additional $3 million over their previous budget, previous approved budget. And that would be just shy of $250 million.
Good for them.
With the big B.
Well, good money well
Right.
spent, you know?
You really like when they start heading towards LAPD numbers. They're just all about that progress, let's say.
$250 million.
Yes.
This is how many years in a row of a increased police budget?
8 years.
That's lovely.
Yes.
Just fucking all the years.
I like that we keep increasing the budget, and yet we have increasing numbers of vacancies in the patrol units.
Yeah.
I think there are 101 positions now that are not being filled because young people are cool and don't want to be cops.
They're like, but
What?
we need more money because we have to make sure that we pay people a lot of money to work extra time because nobody else wants to do this fucked up job.
Oh God. I can't
But
wait to get into that
also-
portion.
Overtime is not part of the budget.
Yeah.
It's a confusing situation because they wanted to be there. They were just like, well, we're going to get rid of those 100 vacancies that we have. And they're like, okay, well, then does that save us money? And it's like, well, no, it's cost neutral because the money that we would have saved on them, we're going to spend on overtime instead for the other people that have to stay over. And it's just
Well,
like,
Yeah, they're not
Cool,
getting rid
I
of the
guess.
101 vacancies, not the patrol ones. They actually want to fill the patrol ones. They want to get rid of vacancies, or they want to get rid of vacancies in other spaces and then like delete some jobs. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else we want to say on the front end on this? Just like there are some like add remove job positions. There's some shuffling of things, but by and large, it seems like a little bit of an increase in the budget, and for the money that they're not spending on these 101 empty patrol positions, they're just trying to hold on to that as hard as they can. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but anything else to add there?
I mean, they don't know how to make a presentation to save their lives. Can we just say, like, if you watched any of I was on the call last night and it was literally like, each person would speak for like 8 to 10 minutes, summarizing things and have one slide.
Oh yeah, just throwing out numbers too verbally, and it's like, what am I hearing? I
Well,
can't keep up with this.
What is all of this? What does this mean? Also, like the
we get-
graphics are not like you can't see them super well.
Yeah. Well, and also like Katie basically had to ask for their scripts because she would have had to read through everything and try and transcribe it to figure out exactly what they said. It was just
Right.
nonsense.
It's Caity Maple, District 4.
No, Katie
Katie
Valenzuela.
Valenzuela, District
Oh,
4.
yeah.
This
Kaity
is where we
Valenzuela,
run into
District
the
4.
problem.
Oh my God. Can one of you change your fucking name? Okay. So let's get into it. I believe public comment was front loaded.
Uh-huh. Which is my
and I
favorite when they
believe-
do that.
Yeah. And then like once that was all over with, and there were some fantastic public comments as well, but I don't think we'll get too far into that today. But shout out to public health advocates, all of you, D'Angelo, Ryan, Christina. I don't know if I know the fourth person, but just incredible folks doing incredible work and really setting the agenda when the city council wants to talk about one thing, forcing them to talk about this in a different way, which I thought was really beautiful. And really what they're trying to talk about is reimagining public safety, right? And that, I guess, brings us to the discussion on the dais. The first
Which
three
one?
council members to talk were Councilmember Caity Valenzuela of District 4, Councilmember Caity Maple of District 5, and then Mayor Pro Tem Mai Vang of District 8. And all of them sort of brought some really good points and thoughts on what does public safety mean? Did this city or did it not actually pass a resolution saying that we need to rethink what public safety is and actually fund things that prevent violence before it happens, right?
Yeah.
So Caity Maple, nope. Caity Valenzuela goes first. District
You
4.
got this. You got this, Kemba.
Oh my God, it's too early in the day. We got to record at 7 p.m. And that's when I'm my sharpest. Okay.
Ooh.
So Valenzuela sort of starts speaking. What does she say? Who wants to give a background on that?
Basically what she wanted to do was she wanted to get, she had a number of questions about the different position moves, obviously. And then one of the things she wanted to see about getting was having the call data sent, de-identified, and sent to public health advocates, since public health advocates has a grant to be able to research the data to see exactly what type of calls they're getting. Because one of the things that the police even noted at the beginning of their presentation was that they received 648,000 calls in 2022 and responded to a third of them. So there's clearly a number of calls that are coming in that either they're not being addressed or they don't have an adequate staff. Either way, the whole notion is that we have people, a large percentage are more than likely mental health calls. So we need to get the mental health role on board here and get those people sent out. Because as Caity pointed out, like you can get 10 mental health professionals for the same price as 8 cops. So why not try and get those additional people out there and basically have them addressing the issues that they are trained to deal with, so that way you don't have to have police out there doing this. And one of the things she pointed out was that in addition to the fact that these people would know better how to deal with these situations and would be paid less than cops, is that they also would basically be able to avoid the additional staff time that it takes to arrest someone, to book them, to file the report on them. So you save all that time when a cop can be out doing whatever cops do. And then that way you save money and you're actually more directly addressing the issues at hand rather than trying to put cops in the position of everything.
Incredibly straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things I think we're probably going to continue to talk about Caity Valenzuela's comments, but having watched her for the whole time that she's been up on the dais, she is someone who can like succinctly communicate her questions. Last night, this is not to say that she didn't communicate them well, but even Caity Valenzuela was like having to ask like sort of really long worded questions because the way that the cops presented things was as clear as mud. And
Right.
So like in order for her to get her question across, she also had to sort of like restate as a matter of clarification before getting to the question, or restate the things that the cops had already said as a matter of clarification and then get into her question. And it was just like, it also shows you like the level at which her brain is having to operate while sitting on that dais and listening to the police bullshit. But yeah, she's asking the question that makes the most sense. Like,
Yes.
if you're not responding to, if you're saying that there's a fuck ton of mental health calls and you're not able to respond to them, and we as a body have determined that public safety is not having cops respond to those calls, then why are we not thinking about putting money into alternative interventions for mental health crises?
Yeah.
And what does that do? That just like chapped some fucking asses real quick.
Yeah. So there was a lot of talk too on community organizations that
Right.
are really boots on the ground and really do the preventative work. So so fewer and fewer of these of these responsive calls have to take place, right? These emergency calls.
Right.
Barry Axios, his work with I believe it's Voice of the Youth, among other nonprofits, like that's really good work that keeps kids safe and not doing things that are going to be harmful to themselves and to others. But back to Shannon's point, this stuff with these, it's like, okay, we have an emergency call. Everyone agrees. Literally everyone agrees. The cops agree that these mental health calls or these calls for unhoused folks, I'm not equipped to go to them. I'm here to fight crime. So, that's why we started the Department of Community Response, which is consistently underfunded. So as both of you were saying, why don't we take some of this not used money from whatever coffer, from these 101 vacant patrol cop positions, put that towards a higher number of, mental health, public health professionals who cost less than a cop, and get them out on the street and get them responding to these calls that everyone agrees, including the cops, that the cops should not be responding to. And as Caity is sort of paving the way towards that, Caity Valenzuela saying, let's just get the data together. Let's just pull it together.
Right.
Let's just,
metrics. That's all.
We need to clarify what these calls are so that we can use finer granularity and figure out what would have been needed in that call, so that it could have been a mental health professional that connects you with services, as opposed to a cop who over responds, now arrests you, now is using overtime hours to take you down to the police station and book you, when now it's a waste of so many different resources now on the city and the county level, right? And when Caity asked for this information,
she
who
doesn't
got
even
very
get
angry?
fully...
Who got their ass chafed about it?
Fucking Howard. But
Howard
he doesn't even...
Chan, the city manager.
He doesn't even allow her to really finish a thought before he says, I'm going to interrupt you. He may have said he's sorry that he has to interrupt her, but whatever, fuck you, dude. And he then is like, I'm just so what is it that you're asking? And she's like, I'm asking for the data to be assessed. I just fucking clearly stated that, dude. I mean, here's the deal. Caity was not a shithead to him, and she gets a fucking badge of honor for that shit, because I don't know how she doesn't just look over at him, and I don't know how her face stayed.
He sucks.
Cool. He fucking sucks so hard.
This man makes $500,000 a year. We pay the $500,000 a year.
And he had a fucking tantrum up there, is what we saw. It was a full ass tantrum because he didn't like that
there was criticism.
There was criticism, and it was also pointed out rightly that the council body votes on the budget. The city manager is not the person that gets to make the decisions about the budget, and he just can't fucking handle that anyone else would have any power. He's moving the fucking chess pieces in his little partnerships with council folks, and for Caity to bring up Valenzuela, to bring up any sort of alternatives, any really smart fucking questions that, whether or not you agree, they make sense considering the conversations that have happened on that dais.
Well, even early on, she literally explains the fact that she understands that it's going to be an on-ramp to get these new services ramped up and switch. She literally says, and get the system changed. So in order to do that, she understands it's going to take some time. By the end of the conversation, Howard was literally being like, I do agree that we need to shift some of those calls over time. But my response is it's not going to happen overnight. And both Katie and her will be like, no one expects that to happen. Like, you're literally moving the goalposts here to make it seem like we're asking for something that's ridiculous, and we're not.
Yeah. Well, it's that like, I think what we saw was this level of like manipulation. Like, he really tried to manipulate the narrative to make it seem as if, you know, Katie Valenzuela was asking for something that she wasn't, because she very clearly stated that she understood that these are not things that are going to take place overnight, and they're surely not things that are going to take place before the beginning of before the budget is approved and the new fiscal year starts.
Right.
But she is saying, you know, we have had very important conversations about this shit on the dais before, and so let's hold ourselves accountable to those things. Yes. And he just can't, like, he can't. I mean, he's manipulated his way into his $500,000 paycheck, so why the fuck wouldn't he try to manipulate the conversine the way he did?
Is his paycheck like a half of the entire Department of Community Response? Like, how much is?
No, they're 9 million, I think.
Okay,
so
thank God.
Yeah, okay. But they were Katie did bring up the fact that there actually was a decrease in DCR's funding, not the general fund, but in the multi-year operating plan, and she pointed that out, and that was another issue. And he was very cagey in responding. She was like, "I want to find out like where this is going to go to, why this is decreasing," and he's like, "Well, we can discuss that later. We're going to have a Measure O discussion." And she's like, "Oh, so we're going to address it there?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, like in a roundabout way." And it was just like, could you just answer the question of your bosses? Like, this feels like insubordination. What the hell?
That's the thing. That was the funny thing to me. Him interrupting her. Him sort of.
He was getting defensive.
It's like, this is one of your bosses. You work at the pleasure of City Council.
I just want to read his quote, because at one point this just shows how defensive he is and how much he has the back of PD. He goes, "It is hard to hear the public comments and comments from the council about our police department. We could always do better, because the very people on the dais here," he was literally staring directly at Katie when he said this, "have called me and asked me for help with the police department. And so I would just like some balance here so it's not so one-sided." And she brings up the guy that was stalking her. And it was exactly that. And he was like, "Oh, no, that's not what I meant." It was so clear.
No. That was pointedly at her. And that was a real piece of shit move by Howard Chan.
100%.
I look forward to a time when the council, you know, maybe we can vote some folks in who do not find that he's working at their pleasure any longer. Because this motherfucker has to go. That was a real fucking low blow. When a person who, by the way, was experiencing a mental health crisis was threatening her. Yeah. Like, this is why we have to invest in mental health care, in different things that don't result in people undergoing crises that result in people being threatened or harmed. This is like the precise fucking point we're all making.
The escalation doesn't happen, and so you never have the police needing to get involved if you just addressed it from the outset, and they never want to even look into that.
So he is of the bootlicker block on the dais, which also involves Councilmember Rick Jennings,
Sean Baby,
and Councilmember Sean Baby Laloe. Those were the three who kind of made all that same comment up there, like, well, I just think people aren't seeing all the good stuff we're doing here, and then, you know, the cops. And so
much good work.
Yeah. But that was a fascinating back and forth. And I missed it at first, but I came home a little bit later and I joined the meeting. I was able to watch it before we recorded today, but then I saw, unless there's anything else we want to add to the Valenzuela portion here.
No.
Okay. I hopped on kind of just at the beginning of the comments of Councilmember Caity Maple of District 5.
Yeah.
Shannon, can you give a little background on Caity Maple and her and cops and cop money, and then how we ended up here today and kind of what that meant?
Yeah, when Caity Maple, District 5, ran for her seat, she was very clear that like accepting cop money was not a thing, right? Like, because she would not be bought by the cops, which was something that is important to a lot of folks in her district.
Mhm.
And when she won the seat, and right out of the gate, there's this vote that takes place about it's to decide whether or not money is going to be used to purchase a new toy for the police department. And
well, okay, let's make it 100% clear, because we know she'll nitpick it if she does listen to this.
Well, yeah,
not to
I'll
accept
get there.
grant money for
right. I was gonna get there. It's
okay,
not.
sorry.
It's like
grant money, right?
She's so picky about it when she's
super picky. Yeah, it was like this money was not coming out of the general fund. It was grant money. Blah blah blah. But whatever. But like, it doesn't fucking listen. You voted to give the cops.
Yeah. Well, then they play the semantics
thing.
game too. Like, oh, it's a tractor. It's like, no, it's a fucking tank.
Yeah, it's a tank. And when you got so here's the thing. She voted in favor of giving making it possible for the cops to take this grant money to buy this fucking tank that like a bunch of cops they wear their fucking military armor and have their big automatic weapons and storm the gates of someone's home or whatever. And so this was a huge thing, right? Because she had platformed as someone who did not take cop money and was very much with the people in her district around, folks who were saying that, the cops caused harm to the community. And she was all about like finding alternatives, whatever. So this was like super surprising to a lot of people. And actually it really ended up hurting her. She got a lot of heat for that vote.
Yeah.
And she should have
a lot of political capital with her base, because she ran on a sort of it
was like an anti-cop
police department. Yeah. And it was a demilitarizing the police department.
Demilitarizing the police, right.
Well, there was also the part that she was like basically using victims to justify it. She was saying, well, it's used in domestic violence situations. Yeah. So that's why. And it was just very like, it's very gross. Because
again, I would argue that that's Ashby in her fucking ear, but that's just
100%. Yeah. Well, because also at the time, Ashby was still on the dais and it was she was giving using the language that Ashby was using.
I don't think Ashby was still on the dais. I don't think they've ever been on at the same time.
Oh, you're right. Because Kaplan
they're
was
tight.
sworn in.
Kaplan is Ashby.
You're right.
2.0. But yeah, so that cost her a lot of political capital with her base, people who went out and knocked on doors for her. And I think a lot of the people who voted for it were like, or a lot of establishment Democrats were like, why aren't you mad at the other 6 people who voted for this on the dais? And it's like, well, they didn't run on a demilitarization platform, right? And people put their time and effort into getting her into office. We're kind of rehashing a whole thing here. Fast forward to this week. I think a lot of people were wondering where she would land on this. And she ended up being pretty good. I like the language I was hearing. I was like, okay, like let's
say
where this goes.
I appreciated what she was saying. And at times it didn't feel like there was a lot of commitment behind it. It just felt like she was reading a script. And a lot of the stuff that she was saying, Caity was saying
the script.
Well, and also like Caity had just said it, and I'm sorry, but as being on people's budget, being around people of color,
are we going to accuse Maya of that then too?
No, my situation was just because it was just it felt like white performance. Like I did appreciate what she was saying, but it also felt like white performance because there were times where she was deferring to the cops. Like at one point, she said something like,
Guys,
talking about ShotSpotter.
We got to give these people chances to come back from this shit.
I know. I want it to be genuine. That's the thing.
I think it's true that I think she did a good. I think that her language, she obviously did some reflecting and she thought about it, but I also do think that she is still working out whether or not she is the candidate that she said she is. Like, and you could tell that in her comments, like, because she did sort of lean back and forth.
Yeah.
And she does a lot of like patting the backs of the cops, and like, whatever she can, but we're just taking her for what she's worth.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I just don't think it's helpful if we're all stick and no carrot sometimes,
I don't think that's
Yeah.
what's happening here.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
Mai used the exact same language she did. Mai said, "Thank you to the cops. Thank you for your service." And then
yeah, well, we
it
haven't
was all
got
the
to
exact
Mai
same
yet.
language.
Like, we haven't gotten to her yet, so we
Okay.
haven't even had the opportunity to unpack that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she did do so Katie did do some good things. There was the what's it called, like the spot shooter thing?
ShotSpotter. Yeah, she was
ShotSpotter,
basically
yeah.
she was bringing up criticism related to it, which I really did appreciate it, because she was basically talking about like, well, there's some we've seen some issues with the company apparently, and then also there's this like false positive thing that can happen, and one of the things that the chief spoke to didn't really allay any of those concerns, because she was kind of like, oh, well, we don't get any calls when there are guns being fired. And it's like, well, the ShotSpotter is saying gun fired and no one calls in. Maybe that's one of the false positives, but there was no data to back it up. So it's like, okay, well, this isn't very helpful.
Yeah, they tend to conveniently not have data when it doesn't help them.
Well, I mean, they don't have their, like, even the data that they do have is not, it's not like they're bringing forward any data that actually is going to like ever change anybody's fucking minds. Like,
It's self-preservation, right? Yeah.
the cops, they also already know that they're going to get their goddamn money, like it, so they don't have to work very hard in order to get it. So when someone like Caity Maple says, can you bring back some info on ShotSpotter, they're like, oh shit, now we have to go fucking figure this out. But I think they also know in the back of their minds that it's neither here nor there for whether or not they're going to get their money. Like, the budget's going to pass.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So Maple did that. She did use a lot of the same honestly, a lot of rhetoric we've heard from a lot of our more progressive folks about how, like, aren't we talking about reimagining public safety? Shouldn't we actually be investing in these nonprofits that we've been working with that prevent violence before it actually happens, not respond to it? So there was service to that.
Right. Well, one of the things I will point out, one of the things that Katie Valenzuela pointed out, which I really appreciated, was the fact that, I mean, we're talking about $250 million budget for the police, and 8 CBOs get $1 million.
Yes. So,
like, you're not serious at that point.
What's our priority? And, we give them a little pittance, and then their impact isn't, as much as, one might hope. And it's like, well, you underfunded them.
Yeah.
Fund them what they're worth, And so after those two spoke, do we want anything else on Maple?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
After those two spoke, then Mayor Pro Tem, Mai Vang, was up. Does anyone want to give a little rundown on what she said?
I've talked a lot.
I mean, she did the thing that she does, and always comes out the gate hella polite and is like, thank you everybody for your time, including the cops who work so hard. We see you. Thank you for all of your hard work. And that stuff is always like gag worthy to me, because it just feels like a bunch of bullshit. But she asked similar questions, from Katie Valenzuela to Caity Maple to Mai. There was sort of a lot of like regurgitation of the same lines and the same info, which understandably, like, if you're trying to create any sort of team, like you get on the same page and use like the, you fucking control the narrative. And I think like obviously there's benefit to that because the repetition means that it's going to stick, or it's more likely to stick.
Right.
But
And
I
Howard
do,
can't yell at all three for some reason. He can only yell at Caity Valenzuela, oddly.
That part. Yeah.
right. Well, and I think part of it is because Caity Valenzuela is less likely to Caity Maple and as evidence last night, to pat the backs of the cops in the same way. Like, does she do the thing where she's like, she did say like she appreciates the work the cops do, but there is much less of that. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like, for Caity Maple, I think she's in a lot of ways, she's still trying to figure out like her lane. And I don't know. Mai is just like always the overly polite to everyone council member, especially
That's the
when
hard
it comes
part of Heart and Hustle.
right.
Got a
I
big
mean,
heart.
and also the thing is, like, at the end of the day, these are all still politicians, right? And so they're all going to do things that are frustrating and disappointing. And that, things like, high-fiving the cops. Do I think that sucks? Yeah. But do I get why they do it? Yeah. Like, I think that there were comments that needed to be made that were made, and it sucks that they were coated with powdered sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then she did sort of just say like, just ditto to what Caity and Caity said, right? She's like, and then she started pushing on this 101 cop vacancy conversation, right?
Yeah.
And that got really interesting to me, like, because she's like, well, why don't we line item this and like, okay, like, so you've got all this budget for these 101 cops who don't exist and aren't on the street. Where's that money going? Like, what is happening to it? And can we consider some other options to it? Again, like a Department of Community Response option, right? Like, let's start giving it to folks who can first respond to a mental health crisis without it resulting in someone being shot and killed or ending up in jail. And as she was asking this question, the cops were like, well, we have to keep all of that money, and we use most of it, definitely. And she's like, okay, like, I mean, where's it going? And they're like, well, a lot of it goes to recruitment, so they're using it to groom new cops, basically. Yep. And then another piece of it, they said, goes to overtime. And I don't know, like, does all that money go to overtime? The average wage of an officer, probably including benefits and stuff, is $140,000 per year. So 101, that would be like $14,140,000, right? $14 million. Are they using all that on those two things? And as she was pushing that, then the assistant city manager, I thought this was really interesting. What's her name? Lainey Milstein?
Lainey, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. She hopped in and was like, oh, well, there are no dollars on the table. They've got to keep all of it. This can't go anywhere else. And then Caity Valenzuela chimed in and they, Caity Valenzuela had actually asked for these numbers months ago. And she's like, hey, Lainey, when we talked about this months ago, that was not what I was told. And there was kind of a bunch of back and forth. And then the chief, Lester, was like, oh, well, we have some, we can put some of it somewhere, but, not all of it everywhere. Again, like a lot of obfuscating, right?
Yeah.
Where it's did you just even say anything?
Well, one of the things that drove me crazy was at one point, I was in a chat, we were talking about this, and it was like frustrating the hell out of me because I can't remember who said it. It might have been the chief, it might have been Howard, but someone mentioned the fact of, oh, well, these blah, blah, blah mandated positions. And it might've been Caity that pushed back. I can't remember. It was just like, wait, how are these mandated? Like, where is the documentation on how many, what's our staffing levels? What are they supposed to be at? And it's just always it's just very like, well, you know, like last Saturday, it was the perfect timing for that whole thing to happen. Of all the new second Saturday, the 500 people for the 8-hour event of the side shows. And it was just like, on those nights, we're just going to need more people. We're going to call in, we're going to have people stay over, have people come in early. And those sorts of things just happen. And it's like, well, but where's the mandate? Like when you say mandate, it sounds very much like it's codified. So we need to know what are those levels so that way we can compare against what we have and be like, oh, okay, well, we can cut here. And it's like, no, it's not actually mandated. And it's just like, okay, well, that's confusing and not helpful.
I mean, they also do the thing where it's like, you know, if you want to have this stuff in the community, like second Saturday, if you want to have fun, then you also have to be protected. And the other thing is, we can't control when someone's going to have a sideshow, and we're just going to have people. We can't plan for overtime because we just don't ever know if we're going to need it or not. And it's, you know, then all of a sudden it's everybody else's fault that they don't know how to plan a fucking budget.
I didn't see one goddamn cop during second Saturday. I don't know.
Same.
Like, what the fuck are they talking about?
They were just so busy with the sideshows.
Sideshow thing, fine, I get that, yeah. But what? So I think that's really interesting, and I hope that they dive deeper into it. But, you know, that's, I guess to both of your points, this is 3 council members who are speaking to at least the language of like, hey, no, let's redistribute these funds to actual preventative community safety programs. Interestingly, the mayor was using that language at the end of that. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was also like, interestingly, like intervening when Howard was being super defensive. Like,
it's true.
And I think it just like, I don't know. I think it says something about where the mayor has found himself in terms of like sitting on that dais and watching. I think that it bothers the mayor that Howard takes up as much space as he does, like in terms of the in terms of power. Like, Howard runs the show, right? And Daryl's like, but I'm the mayor. And so I think what you also find is this like 2 dudes sort of like ramming heads because they're like, Daryl's like, listen, man, I'm the mayor. And Howard's like, listen, man, I'm the city manager. But I also think that Daryl has some sort of like he wants to protect in some ways. I think Caity Valenzuela, Caity Maple, and like in those moments, because I do also think that he's got a thing for creativity and like innovation and people who are coming in and are willing to be a part of more difficult conversations as long as they have decorum whilst having these conversations, then he's down for it. Like, I do see him interjecting more often.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The city manager was so out of line, just interrupting Caity during her time. It was her time.
It was her time. And like, he was not interrupting with anything substantive. He was interrupting because he was annoyed that she was asking valid questions.
Yeah, well, that's why it was frustrating, honestly. Like at one point when she was talking about the public health advocate data, and he was just like, so what do you need? And it's just like, they sent us a thing that said what they needed. Like, that's what it is. What? And she was like, we want a breakdown of the calls. And he was like, oh, we can get you something. And it was just like, it's very like, the data, or are you going to give us a summary from the police that we probably shouldn't trust?
Yeah. So the meeting ended with a whimper. They voted not, basically the proposed budget was just sort of a file thing. It's like, hey, take a look at this. We're going to discuss this and vote on it in the next few weeks. So more of that to come, folks. But then they did vote on continuing the civil asset forfeiture program, which is like just totally fucked. It's basically cops, anytime they arrest you, if you've got like a bunch of money or something that they think is like, something you're using for illegal purposes, they can just take it and they never have to give it back. If you have 20 grand on you and it's yours, they can just take it, and because they think there was a crime involved, and a judge will never, ever force them to give it back. And I don't know if I saw anybody vote no on it. Like, Daryl passed it so fast. He said, all who agree, aye. He didn't give time for a nay or an abstain. So I don't even know where people landed on that shit.
Yeah, I mean, also so it was quick. Like they had been in chambers since 2:00.
Yeah,
and it was like 11:15.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I am interested with where that landed though. Yeah, so it all ended, but we got a couple minutes. Can we talk about this Nazi that keeps coming to City Hall?
Yeah.
Oh man.
This guy, Ryan Misano, he keeps coming in and he keeps spouting this like anti-Semitic shit to a city council that has a Jewish mayor, and it's like it's very fucking unsettling and like it's horrific. And he has a history of this. Apparently he used to live in Vallejo because he used to come to their city hall and do this very thing. I don't know if either of you have looked up much on him, but he once did this in Vallejo City Hall for again, well over a month. And when they refused to let him talk past his 2 minutes, they brought in some officers. And so he sat on the ground and he got dragged out by his feet. And
yeah, sick.
Here's how Sacramento's a little different. When he went to do his comment for like the fourth time, now fifth, I don't know. I don't even know about this guy until a month ago. Clearly everyone's sick of him. The mayor is sick of him. People on the dais, multiple people turned around. Valenzuela, Vang, credit where it's due, Lisa Kaplan, Caity Maple left the fucking room. And Daryl turned around, I believe, as well. And this piece of shit is spouting his bullshit again. And of course, the leftists out there are just like, shut the fuck up, fuck you. And as that happens, this is considered a disruption by our newly knighted decorum officer. And I hate this because my one rule is to be nice to the city clerk, but man, our city clerk just gave this Nazi 30 extra seconds to do this comment when honestly, if they didn't give him the seconds and he sat down like a little prick, then we could have dragged him out by his feet as well.
Yeah. No, it was ridiculous. And it was ironic to me that all the people that the decorum officer and all the decorum rules were created for were actually defending Daryl and pushing back against the anti-Semitism. And Mindy was just like, well, no, wait a second. He gets his full 2 minutes. Let's make sure, literally making sure that the clock was set back. And it's like, you cut everyone else off, but this is it. This is where you just are super principled. Okay, sure. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's total fucking garbage, and it sucks that we haven't addressed the issue that the city clerk is now the person who is in charge of calling the meeting to order should it be disrupted. Which is, that's a whole other thing, because generally it's the chair of the meeting who would call a meeting to order if it were to become out of order. But the chair of the meeting, the mayor, has been unsuccessful in his efforts to call a meeting to order because the city can't seem to do its fucking job. And so people continue to show up to agitate rightly because the council doesn't get the luxury of advocates' silence when they just continue to fuck up left and right. So that aside, right, like, or so that stated, the mayor can't get shit together, and they're like, all right, so here's the week after, there's this like what they call like disruption, right? Because advocates yell and it's a whole fucking thing, and the mayor's like ready to get the cops involved. Suddenly on the agenda comes this item that the city clerk is going to become the decorum officer, which the title is rich. And yeah, it's like in a it's problematic for a number of reasons. And in a situation like the one that we're unpacking now, where this fucking Nazi shows up and is spewing a bunch of anti-Semitic hate to a mayor who is Jewish, like, should he necessarily be the person who has to like address this guy? No, I think that there should be somebody else who, I think that they're like at that point, that's when
the fucking streets, like,
yeah, I mean, that's when your colleagues step in to support you, right? And so I don't think that like Mindy, the city clerk, having to call the meeting to order or whatever, like, but the thing is that what we saw happen last night was the community takes care of community, right? And so this guy is spewing fucking hate, and the people in the seats are like, fuck you, dude, get out of here with your bullshit, because that's what you do when a fucking Nazi shows up. Like, you silence them. And the city clerk is like, hold on, he gets 30 more seconds.
Yeah.
Like,
what?
So it's problematic times two. Yeah. Really.
I think that's the classic sort of push and pull too between, you know, your regular Democrat and a leftist, is like and like, you know, as a journalist, I've very much been on a side of like, you know, First Amendment purity, but I've certainly moved from that over the years. It's like, these Democrats are like, let them say, you know, they're allowed to, hate speech is protected, blah, 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 blah. And leftists are like, no, we're going to show you pretty fast that you're not welcome here. And I don't know. I just think something's got to be done about this guy. Ryan Messano, RyanMessano, folks. If you feel like looking him up, get him the fuck out of there, you know?
Yeah.
And no one in City Hall is going to do it.
He appears to shop from like exclusively at Kohl's.
Oh, that hat.
So
that hat. Like his sun hat? What was that?
Yeah, he's got what that's called is fashion. So you might find him at your local
Exactly.
Fashion.
We like to call it the fash.
Oh man, I'd like to think that guy's got it coming though. But I guess that's that with City Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that place is tight. I love it there.
The best.
I've been talking with journalist friends, and we've been talking about how it's been kind of a snooze fest like this session since, you know, January or whatever. But like, wow, did this week deliver?
Well, then we talked last week on the show about why it's such a fucking snooze fest.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's nice to get the little, you know, spring shake up.
Mm-hmm. Looking forward to the next few episodes. 4 more episodes, folks, before our summer break.
So now is the time to visit patreon.com/voicesrivercity. Because we love what we do.
Surprise river meetups. You never know.
Oh, that sounds fun. That would be fun if we did that with patrons.
I would not be in attendance.
No. Aw, I love the river. Okay,
no, I love it too, but
Let's call it. I've got a socialist meetup to go to.
I got a 6-pack of hard kombucha to drink because I'm off of work tomorrow.
Oh, congrats.
Nice.
Thank you.
Hard booch.
Booch life.
I'm gonna booch it up. I'm actually not gonna booch it up. I'm gonna finish reading a thriller.
Well, we'll leave it at that, folks. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Go fuck yourselves.
Dang.
Damn. Bye.